winning the semifinal match, getting into, the US Open and the Masters, that was like a life-changing, 18 holes for me. And, I was really fortunate to have won that match in some comeback fashion and be able to, go on this journey that I'm on now.
What's up, folks? There are few things in golf that Tiger Woods has not done, but our guest today has done something even Tiger never did. That's right, he was the 2024 Low Amateur in both the Masters and the US Open. My guest today is Neal Shipley. Neal is an up-and-coming PGA Tour golfer. We talk about everything that he's accomplished in his very young career, including his WHOOP data. We look at everything regarding the US Open, how he recovers, how he sleeps. He gives me some tips on my golf game, and he even builds the perfect professional golfer. Who's the best driver, who's the best iron player, the best putter, the best chipper. We get into it with Neal. That is this episode right now. Neal, welcome to the WHOOP Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
We were just talking about what an unbelievable Masters experience you had. You were the Low Amateur there, and you were just describing to me you had your best friend on the bag. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I think part of having him on the bag was to create a memory that both of us would never forget. And certainly with everything that happened that week, it's something that we cherish and we still talk about. And I mean, I saw him the other week, and it's just, man, how crazy is it that we did this with Tiger and we had all these memories and jokes. And yeah, just one of the most fun weeks of my entire life. I've always dreamed of playing the Masters, and to have Carter next to me that entire way was just awesome.
What was your impression rolling into Augusta?
Well, I mean, the first time you roll down Magnolia Lane, it's, as a few months before the tournament, and it's quite honestly emotional because that's one of those places that you almost feel like you'll never get to until you're actually there.
Totally.
And it didn't really feel real that I was going to play the Masters until I got on property. And when I got there, it was just like, it's just so serene, and you can feel the history on the course. And it's just such a special place in golf.
The anticipation coming down Magnolia Lane is one of the I mean, there's like certain places in the world that have certain auras, and that drive-in has an aura.
Yeah, it really does. And it's so cool too, because you drive up to that gate and they have those big pillars, and the security officer just clicks on his belt, and they drop down on the ground, and he's like, go ahead and enjoy your day. And I went 2 miles an hour down Magnolia Lane, probably took 10 minutes to get down there,
Right.
just soaking it in. It was, it's just, yeah, something really special.
So you go a couple months before, and I assume you had to be there with a member?
Actually, the tournament allows us to do 5 trips, 5 days on our own, and we can bring one guest to walk with us, not play, but just walk. So it kind of had a lot of people begging me to take them.
Who'd you pick?
I got my brother to go there for a day. My assistant coach who caddied for me at the US Amateur, I had him for 2 days. He was kind of part of my strategy team for the week. And then my buddy Carter, who's going to caddy for me, I had him for 2 other days. So it was each of those trips, and was really special and had its own great memories.
What was your impression of the golf course the first time?
I mean, that first time that you play, you kind of look around and you're like, well, that's where Bubba Watson hit that shot, and that's where Phil Mickelson hit that shot on 13, and this is where Tiger made that putt.
Yeah,
and
you have that like
chip.
encyclopedia in your head, right?
It's like, you kind of look around all these places and you're like, wow, and you kind of see like, holy smokes, like some of these shots that these guys hit were really hard, and you kind of get a really good appreciation for like, how special those moments were. And the golf course is hard too. It's really tough.
Well, two of the shots I actually went to when I played there, like one was the Bubba Watson on what was it, 10?
Mm-hmm.
That crazy hook shot he played as a lefty from the Pines. And that shot's totally insane when you stand there. Like, doesn't make any sense. And then the other that I actually was even more impressed by was the Tiger Woods chip in on 16. And I dropped a ball there because the pin was exactly in the place, like it was in that Sunday location. And I mean, I'm like a 3 handicap or whatever, so obviously I'm not anywhere in your all leagues, but normally you think you can hit a chip from the side of the green, and I couldn't even get it within like 30 feet. It was just impossible, that chip that he made.
Yeah, I tried it too on one of my trips, and it's really hard. And then when I played with him, I asked him about it, and he's like, well, back when I played it, and it must have been 2005, they hadn't redone the green yet, so the slope was like twice as bad. So he was like, tell me how much harder it was back then too, and I was like, well, all right, Tiger, like
And
that's
so it was harder
yeah,
then.
it's
Yeah,
harder than
exactly.
I was like, it's just nuts. Some of the crazy things he did is just, I mean, that's why he's one of the greatest to ever play, and I think a great ambassador for the game as well.
How old are you now?
23.
So you're 23. I'm 34. But for me, Tiger Woods was kind of the it athlete,
Mhm.
in my lifetime growing up. I mean, I had a little bit of Jordan. Like Jordan was probably a little too old for you,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, Tiger Woods, like what kind of pull did he have for you in becoming a pro golfer?
I mean, definitely had a lot. I mean, when I was growing up in like '05 through maybe like '08, '09, when he had a pretty good run there, a couple good years, few majors. I was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and really time when I started to love golf. And so I was always rooting for Tiger, that's for sure, and always wanted to see him win. And man, I remember when seeing him in 19 do what he did at Augusta. That was just so, as a guy who grew up watching him while I was young, it's great to see that again when I was older and just kind of see those special moments. I mean, I really appreciate him and what he's done for the game, and he's made all of us on the PGA Tour a lot of money because
Yeah,
purse
exactly.
sizes are way bigger and all that. It's been it's certainly one of the most important figures I think for me in the game.
Was the first time you ever met him or played with him the Sunday at Augusta?
Yeah, I met him for the first time on the range that Sunday morning, which was I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous walking up to shake his hand. I wonder what the Whoop stats would say on that. Probably
We could
built up.
probably pull that. That would
Yeah,
be funny if that
yeah,
was, like, the highest heart rate of the day.
probably was.
Yeah, and was playing with him what you expected?
It
Did it end up feeling normal eventually? What was
it
it?
it really I was expecting him to be a little more quiet, not as talkative, and it was really cool because we were telling stories and talking the entire day, and, he really, made an effort to, ask about me and, my journey in the game, and it was just a super special day. And also, I think one of the best parts was getting to sit back and watch him, you know, like walk up 18 or walk up to the tee on 12, like the ovations that he got, and just kind
Yeah,
of
right.
realize how much he meant. Or even on 16, walking to 17 tee, he shakes Vern's hand,
Yeah.
and I mean, you get the tree meme
Yeah,
from
right.
that,
Yeah.
but just watching that was like really. I was like, wow, it's a pretty special moment that I had a front row seat to. So.
Now, over the course of those 4 days, what was your mindset for the tournament? Were you just grateful to be there? At any point were you like, "Okay, I gotta be low amateur, I wanna win this?" Like, what was the competitive juices like?
Yeah, I kinda went in there without a lot of expectations, because I didn't wanna limit myself to only low amateur, but also, the reality is it's my first PGA Tour event, my first major. I'm at Augusta. There's a lot of challenges, and, you know, you never know if you're ever gonna get back there. So I went in just trying to enjoy it and make sure that, I was just committed to every shot and, kinda had a good game plan as well. Because when I look back in 15 years, if I had not played well, but I knew I was putting my all into it, I'd have no regrets about that week. So that's kind of the goal for us.
At any point, did you feel more nervous as you were doing more successfully in the tournament?
Coming down the stretch on Friday, what's interesting there is you don't really know what the cut line is at. The scoreboards show the top leaders, but you have no idea what, the 55th guy's at. So you kind of have to guess. And, coming down the stretch, we were at 2 or 3 over on the day, I think at 1 over, 2 over total. And I was thinking in my head, like, I'm pretty close to the cut line. So like those last 4 holes are pretty stressful, and had a lot of definitely a lot of anxiety going on the golf course, and a lot of nerves, and it was a lot of adrenaline too.
I bet. The, uh the result was low amateur. Now, on Sunday, at what point did you feel like that was in play? Was it fairly obvious to you you're gonna win that?
Oh yeah, I guess because we made the cut and it was only amateur, so I knew that was kind of already a given thing, and I think that freed me up to just really enjoy the weekend. I didn't play great on Saturday, but honestly, shooting 80 on Saturday was one of the best things for my career because I got to go hang out with Tiger Woods on Sunday at
It's
Augusta.
kind of meant to be, right?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, that was like, honestly too, I don't think if that doesn't happen, I might not be here in the studio with you because, Tiger just has that pull and, we were the feature group for the first 9 holes and it was only us on there. So it was kinda, just a great day for me and I think a really kind of vaulted my career to where I am now. So
Well, I liked you well before you played with Tiger because I saw a whoop strap on your wrist, so that you were already high in my book. Let's go back to just the origins for you. Like, you grew up in Pittsburgh. Did you always, gravitate to the game of golf?
I definitely did gravitate towards it at a young age. I first had a club in my hand at like not 3, 4 years old. But if I'm being honest, like I loved baseball and I loved basketball. I played both those for a long time. I think at probably some point in my middle school baseball career, I probably wanted to be an MLB pitcher. Um, but I kind of started to settle on golf as I got older, got into high school, and kind of made it my sole focus kind of by the time I turned 14, 15, and just love the game. I love the social aspect of the game. I think it's so great for just people's mental health too. There's a lot of benefits to playing golf and meeting new friends and meeting new people and being outdoors and beautiful settings. I just love that part of the game.
So how good were you when you were 14 years old?
I wasn't the best junior golfer in the world, but I was certainly a solid player, I'd say. I ended up being ranked, you know, probably like 400th my class at the end of high school when I was like 17. When I was 14, I wasn't very as much worse than that. So a lot of development happened
Scratch
probably.
golfer, though, when you
Yeah,
were
probably about
14?
scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Was there a point when in sort of those teenage years where you're like, "Yeah, I'm, like, actually really good at this, like, I could do this professionally," or did you never really think like that?
I never really thought like that. My goal is always just to play Division 1 golf first.
Okay, so
And
that was the
so,
first step.
yeah, I kind of always take it step by step, process by process. So I kind of got to, that place maybe when I was in my sophomore, junior year was like, I think I'm good enough to play Division 1 golf. Just a matter of getting a scholarship somewhere. And then eventually I got into college and felt like I was good enough to, play professionally. And well, what's happened now, I didn't think would happen. So a little bit faster timeline, but it's been a lot of fun.
So you led your high school team to 2 state
hmm
championships. Were there any big moments in that sort of evolution that you feel like helped define your young career?
Um, I think I can remember. I think the second state championship my senior year, I had a really it was only 18 holes for us in Pennsylvania, and I had a really tough back nine, I think, or front nine. And then the back nine, I really turned it on and kind of steadied the ship and helped pull through to, vault the team into first place. And I think that was showing that type of grit and, just kind of showing that you're never out of a round, no matter, what you're at or what hole you're on. That resiliency is something that I still carry with me today.
The old 40-30 or something like that?
Yeah, a lot of that, I'm definitely good for a few of those every once in a
Yeah,
while.
that's great. And so you end up going on to James Madison University and then ultimately transferring. Talk about the sort of the overall collegiate process for you.
Yeah, well, James Madison, I definitely consider that's where I went to college and had my college experience, and
Yeah.
then, I loved it there, but kinda outgrew it both academically and athletically. Just the grad programs there kinda weren't in my wheelhouse, and, I felt like I could move to a golf program that was a little bit better suited towards, developing my game, and just kinda fell in love with Ohio State once I got on campus and met Coach Mosley there, and they really helped me develop my game into what it is now, and had just a lot of fun there. I had great teammates that really pushed me to be better, and I think that's something that was really important for me is having people with that goal of playing professional golf around me, to kind of push me and make me continue to develop.
You were the all Big Ten first team, which is a pretty big honor, and runner up at the 2023 US Amateur. Do you look back on that fondly?
Yeah, that week, that US Amateur week, it's about a year ago now when it happened, and that's what kicked off all this craziness for me. And
Because that's what got you into Augusta
yeah,
too, right?
yeah, it got me into the Masters, got me into US Open, and that week is still talk to the host family I stayed with, and I had one of my teammates staying with me there as well. Um, my host Tim and Sue. Tim was a you know NCAA champion diver at Ohio State and
Oh, that's
An
cool.
Olympian, and it was just such a fun week to have a bunch of Buckeyes around. And those are the type of memories I remember from that week, is just kind of the off the golf course stuff and enjoying the journey that was that entire week. And obviously the result was, obviously you want to win the golf tournament, but you know winning the semifinal match, getting into the US Open and the Masters, that was like a life-changing 18 holes for me. And
That so in a sense, that's almost the biggest moment of the tournament is the
yeah.
semis.
Yeah, I think that's when I was most nervous, probably. That match means the most for sure, because if you lose that match, you get a thanks for coming, and you get to try again next year. But if you win that match, then all of a sudden there's all these perks that come with it, and that was I was really fortunate to have won that match in some comeback fashion and be able to go on this journey that I'm on now.
For people who aren't familiar with the US Amateur, just describe the process for getting in and then the format of it.
Yeah, so last year for us, it was a 36 hole qualifier where you'd have maybe 70 or 80 players for about two to four spots into
So
the
just
tournament.
really hard to get into,
Yeah,
period.
yeah, it is. If you're top 50 in the world, which I wasn't at the time, you have an automatic bid. So that's the easiest way to get in,
Top
probably.
50 amateur in the
Yeah,
world.
top 50 amateur in the world. And then if you're not that, you have to go to qualifying. So I went through qualifying, got through. And then when you get to the championship, it's 36 holes of stroke play with 312 players on two different golf courses. You have to be top 64 or ties, and then they go into a match play bracket. And then, you play, uh, that would be, it's like 8 or 6 rounds of golf, I think,
Yeah.
in
So you go from
4 days.
64 to 32
Yeah,
to the
8, 16.
and so you're playing twice a day.
Yeah, for the first round of 64 and 32, those are both one day, and then you do round of 16 and round of 8 in one day, and that's a marathon of a day. And then semifinals are on its own, and finals are on its own. But the finals is also 36 holes, so if you add in practice rounds, it's probably something 150 some holes or 170 some holes, and
It's an exhausting
a
week.
week. Yeah, recovery that week is really huge. And we're in elevation as well, so that adds a whole nother factor. Is hot, staying hydrated is really difficult. And so it was just pounding fluids, a lot of electrolytes. I'd be doing a lot of like Normatec therapy, or I don't think I did a lot of ice baths back then, but I probably should have.
Right.
A lot of that type of stuff to kind of stay fresh, because you got to be on the top of your game. Because even though we're amateurs, there's a lot of really, really good players that are tour quality playing that event.
Well, the explosion of Whoop in golf for some people was surprising, and people would say to me like, "Why is it so popular in golf?" Like, I wouldn't have expected golf, and I think part of the reason is that so many pro golfers are putting like their bodies through actually an enormous grind that isn't really seen from a fan perspective. It's kind of like, oh, well, they get to play golf. Like, what a great living, right? But, there's all the travel and there's the practicing and then there's an increase in training and then there's the stress of the 6 hour round that you have to go play. And so I think one of the many reasons Whoop has done well in golf is to actually measure that kind of other 20 hours of the day or 18 hours of the day when you're not even in that golf environment, but you're dealing with all the stresses of it. It sounds like, you've been on Whoop for a little while now.
Yeah, I think I've been on since 2020. Kind of joined during the pandemic,
Yeah,
and been it has been really helpful for those reasons that you stated. When like this past 9 weeks, I've been on the road playing, PGA Tour, US Open, going through the playing a 4 round tournament, traveling to the next one, practice rounds, playing a 4 round tournament, and then traveling again, and just rinse and repeat for 4 or 5 weeks. And you have to be really careful about how much strain you put on your body, because when you get to that third, for 1 week you can kind of manage, but by the time you get to that third or fourth week, that's when it starts to catch up to you, and you start to be mentally fatigued or physically fatigued, and then you're not performing your best. And so all these things come into play, like nutrition, how you're recovering, even, like if I wake up in the morning and I see, my recovery score is just not where it should be, that might be a day I only, if I'm able to, if my schedule allows to just go to the range and hit balls, or just kind of, try to take something out to give myself a little more rest and a better chance to recover for that next day.
I think that's smart. I mean, I think in some ways, like golfers in sort of a pre-whoop environment almost just thought like more is more, and they didn't always realize just how much strain they're putting on their bodies. You shared your whoop data with us. Like you have an average day strain of 15. Pretty high, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like very high. You got a healthy heart here. You got an HRV that's around 140, resting heart rate in the mid 50s. Your sleep efficiency is good, 93%. Any tips for sleep?
Gosh, I mean, I tend to I like to get really hydrated before bed, and then also I'm a big on having a really dark room, and I usually, a lot of times I'll be on a phone or laptop, maybe in my bed watching, going through social media or Netflix for 20-30 minutes, but kind of once I hit that 20-minute mark, I try to put it away.
Mm,
Um, I should probably switch over to reading or something.
yeah.
Actually, that'd probably be better for me, but
Have you ever tried blue light glasses?
I have had a pair. I didn't, I actually lost the pair, and I just it's one of those things I don't really think about a lot.
Well,
And
I'm gonna give you a pair because
Mhm.
we made the best ones, and I'm not kidding. Wearing these just it improves your sleep quality. Everything else being the same, it's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love to try them out because that's something that I see. It's so easy to start scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, and
totally.
it's you could go through the Huberman Lab stuff of all the dopamine hits that it gives your brain, and getting off of it and early in the evening is just way better for your sleep. And I noticed that too. When I'm only on it for 10 minutes, I sleep better.
One trend I see in your Whoop data is that you tend to start the week with lower recoveries, and then they kind of steadily build towards the weekend. Of course, tournaments are Thursday to Sunday, so that's a good thing. But like if we look at your Masters week, for example, you had an 11% recovery on Monday, 44% on Tuesday, 71% on Wednesday, and then you go 62%, 39%, 70%, and then 86% for that Tiger round. What would you say is happening earlier in the week versus later in the week for some of these tournaments?
Yeah, I think I got there on property on Saturday afternoon, and we spent all Sunday walking the golf course, getting notes down for the yardage book. Because out there, that's a huge process. The books they give us aren't necessarily the most detailed in the world, so it's designed to be that way. So if you've been there for 5 or 6 years, you kind of have an edge on some of the younger guys. And so
That's interesting. Like, I
yeah,
bet, like, Fred Couples' book or whatever is
yeah,
super valuable
yeah,
or,
or
like,
like some of these caddies
Tigers.
that have been there for 10 years. It's like they have anything you could think of on there.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to get a book that was adequate for the week. So we spent, 6 hours on the golf course, and then I hit balls, and I was probably overreaching a bit in terms of how much I was preparing. And I think I've matured more recently of realizing that like rest is sometimes good practice. You
Yeah.
don't need to I don't need to be on the range. And I think it's a trend that you see in young golfers is guys will spend too much time practicing because they see everyone else practicing and think they need to be there all day. And in reality, it's a lot better just get in, do your work, and get out.
What's up, folks? If you are enjoying this podcast or if you care about health, performance, fitness, you may really enjoy getting a Whoop. That's right. You can check out Whoop at whoop.com. It measures everything around sleep, recovery, strain, and you can now sign up for free for 30 days. So you'll literally get the high performance wearable in the mail for free. You get to try it for 30 days, see whether you want to be a member. and that is just at whoop.com. Back to the guests. So, US Open,
Mhm.
you had a little bit of a higher recovery earlier in the week. So you're 44% and then jumped up 87%, and then you're kind of like low green, high yellow through the weekend. Although you had a 16% on Saturday. Talk a little bit about your US Open experience.
Yeah, I mean, that week was really hot, really muggy. By the time you get back to the house that I was staying at, I'd be so tired and pretty much wanna go right to bed. And, if I recall, I think that Saturday or Friday night going to Saturday, I mean, I just couldn't fall asleep that night for whatever reason.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what that was about, and so just woke up not feeling, great, but, at the end of the day, you have to go out there and try and perform. I think I played pretty well that Saturday. That's one of the struggles with golf is you're playing every week, and you're gonna have days where you're maybe not feeling your best, and you just kinda have to suck it up sometimes, and then that next night, try to get as good of rest as possible to kinda get yourself in a good shape for tomorrow.
Will you notice anything different about your body when your recovery on whoops lower versus higher? Like, will you treat it a little differently on the range or anything like that?
I think physically, I tend to the spots where I might have aches and pains, I'll tend to feel that a bit more. A lot of the times for me, I might have a little bit of low back tightness, stuff like that, and I've tend to feel a little bit more fatigued as well. So I think whenever I'm don't get a good recovery, it's important to focus on just your warm up and maybe before you get on the range with stretching and making sure that I'm loose and ready to go, and try to avoid injuries and stuff from not being pliable before you start hitting balls.
So you were also the low am at the US Open. Was your experience at the Masters something that helped you feel more comfortable with taking that on? Like, was that another situation where you felt like, okay, I can do this?
I think after that Masters experience, I felt prepared to take on those best players in the world. Um, being able to make the cut out there and was one of the highest cuts in recent Masters history. I was, felt great about my game and great about how my game traveled to really tough golf courses. And so coming to Pinehurst, I really liked the golf course. It was in great shape for us, and I felt like I could really compete there, especially because there's some things I did well in my game that some other guys can't do. Like I can just hit a really high ball that lands soft on the green, and not everyone can do that out there. And I hit a little further, which all that's kind of conducive to playing well at a U.S. Open. And
Hmm.
so, kind of going into the week, the goal there really was to be low amateur and try to compete to climb the leaderboard and shoot a low score.
So Ken Venturi, 1956, Jack Nicklaus, 1960, Phil Mickelson, 1991, Matt Kuchar, 1998, and Victor Hovland, 2019, and then obviously Neal Shipley, 2024. That is the group of golfers that have won low amateur at the Masters and the US Open in the same year. Pretty rare company you got there.
It's pretty crazy to kind of read that. I've seen it before, and I think obviously I have big shoes to fill there because we have some of the best to have ever done it. I mean, you said Jack Nicklaus is on that list, and
Yep.
I mean he's the goat probably by
Yeah.
a lot of people, just by major count, obviously, and an Ohio State guy as well.
There
So
you go.
got the chance to meet Jack, and it's kind of crazy to know that I'm kind of in one of those stat lists with them, and yeah, I think it just gives me a lot of confidence too that I have. If those guys are the only ones to do it, then I have the game to go out and have a great career like all of them have so far too.
And at this stage, you're now playing on the PGA Tour.
Mhm.
How's that been?
It's been crazy. We've been playing on sponsors exemptions and just kind of taking whatever opportunities we can get. And I've just felt so comfortable out there. Just that experience at Augusta and the experience at the U.S. Open. I feel like I can compete. I've played really well. I've had a top 10, a couple top 20s, I think. And I feel when I play with these guys out there, obviously they're great players, but I feel like I can go out there and beat them if I'm playing well. And so that's just you know, it's great to see. And I've had a lot of stretches of where I've shown resiliency after some bad holes or bad stretches. made a couple cuts when, maybe things weren't looking great after 27 holes, and just feeling really good about where my game's at, and just excited for the opportunities that I'm going to get in the fall to go out and compete with those guys again.
There's so many statistics in golf, like your average putts per round or strokes gained, on the greens or driving and all these things. And I'm curious, is that something that you find yourself now looking at? Yeah, I mean, for the first time, you kind of have more information on your game than you probably ever have had. Intuitively, you've known certain things like, oh, I putted well, or oh, I drove well, or whatever. But do you find you're diving into all that data? Does it affect how you practice?
Yeah, for sure. Now that I think I have like 16 rounds on tour of shot link data is what it is. And
Yeah.
it gives you so much detail. And so now that I have a sample size that's big enough, I've been kind of diving into some of it, and it has really, maybe affected how I practice. I still book out a lot of time to every part of my game, but for example, my putting, one place I really need to improve is from like 4 to 10 feet.
Hmm.
I'm losing a lot of shots from 4 to 10 feet. My lag putting's been okay, and inside 4 feet, I've been great. Um, but if I can make like more 5, 6, 7, 8 footers, and all of a sudden we start gaining a lot more shots on the field, which in turn, if you gain a shot or two more tournament, then that's huge over the course of a season. So just kind of been, instead of with my putting, focusing more on that mid range, and kind of adjusting. And, I think that's one thing about golfers is we're always tweaking things, and we're always looking to find an edge somewhere. And I think having that access to data has been really huge for me to kind of know where I need to kind of look for that next edge and where to get better and become more well rounded.
One of the things I find fascinating about the data is just how it demonstrates how close everyone is. I mean, I think Rory McIlroy was the one who said it to me, but he said the difference between being top 5 in the world and being like 100 in the world is like a little bit over one shot around. I
Yeah,
guess in terms of stroke average.
yeah,
I mean, that's pretty insane.
it's nuts. It just goes to show how good all those guys are, and how important it is throughout the course of a season to really be on your game, and not ever really give up on a tournament, because you never know what can happen. And one shot, it happens every year where some guy misses his card by a shot or misses the playoff by a shot. Like Justin Thomas last year missed the playoff by one shot,
Yeah.
and he could probably look back at a 2 or 4 footer, back in April, that if he would have made,
Yeah,
he would have
right.
been in the playoffs. And
It's
so it's
crazy,
important
yeah.
to like, really treat every event the same. It's pretty nuts how razor thin it is, but that's great for if you're the 100th guy in the world. It's great because you only need to improve by a shot in theory, and you never know how you could do that. And it's always razor thin. And us golfers are crazy. We're always looking for new ways to improve and doing crazy stuff. You look on TV and guys are putting all different types of ways now, and
Yeah.
it's we get creative about it.
Okay, let's play a game for a second. You have to create the perfect golfer in your mind. And so you take, specific aspect of the game, say driving,
Hmm.
and then you pick a pro golfer for that. Let's see the perfect golfer according to Neal.
Okay, so this is a tough one. So I would go driving the golf ball. I'd probably have to go Roy McIlroy. I mean, statistically this year, he's the best
Yeah,
driver on tour. I'm gonna pick a long iron game myself. I think I'm one of the best out there with
let's go. I
a
like it.
5, 4, 3 iron in my hand. So I like my chances with that. With short irons, I gotta go Scotty Scheffler though.
Yeah,
He's just it's ridiculous when you look at the stats. He's leading so many different categories with his irons. Short game, it's a little bit of a dark horse pick, but Patrick Cantlay. I played with
mm,
him Saturday at Augusta, and he hit some golf shots that I was like just crazy impressed with around the greens. So definitely that, and then putting for sure, an unknown name, but really should be known. Russell Henley.
huh.
He helped me out a lot at Augusta, and he's a guy who hits it shorter, but can really, really roll the rock. So that's going to kind of be the picks. A couple. I
I
got to
like
throw a
that.
couple
I
different
like
names
that.
in
Like,
there, but
there's some diversity in
yeah.
there. When you see a guy who's really doing stuff around the greens that you haven't seen before, like What is it that they're able to do?
Um, some guys have just a couple of different shots that I might not know, or like Patrick hit this one ridiculous shot. We were just over the green on he was just over the green on 14, and he maybe has to pitch the ball 3 or 4 yards, onto the green, and it'll just kinda roll out another 6 feet, but, he definitely had the option to putt it, which would've been the percentage play, but he took his 60 degree and just opened it up like a just straight up into the air, took a swing that kinda went from knee height to knee height, just,
Wow.
like, cut straight under it. It landed on the green and kinda spun a bit, and right after the round, I went to the short game area and I was like, "All right, how in the world did I do this? Because I gotta learn that
You
shot."
immediately went to go practice the shot he
Yeah,
just hit.
yeah, it's 'cause I saw him hit it twice, and I was just like, "That's just, like" it's just, like, a really helpful shot in some circumstances, and he did it like it's just no big deal,
Yeah,
and
like he
so
had
that
done it
was
all the time.
yeah. Some guys too with the short game that they, using different types of spin on the ball, get the ball closer, use slopes, you really have to be creative about it and really visual. I think visualization definitely for all of your game in golf, but especially around the greens is really important.
I had a really interesting conversation with Brad Faxon once about putting. Brad Faxon is obviously considered one of the best putters of all time, and he was saying that like something like 90% of the putt is actually before you hit it. And often when he's working with a player on putting, they'll spend a ton of time just in everything before the putt,
Mhm.
you know? And it was just an interesting thing for me to think about, like, how committed are you to the line? Do you even have the right line, right? Like, what's your routine right before you hit the ball? And for a lot of guys, like, actually the act of hitting the ball is not the hard part in putting.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I find myself right now too, working on how am I reading putts, you know, you have to like pick the speed you want and then match the line with it. And then, there's a lot of different ways to visualize on the greens. A lot of guys visualize, I want to hit it to a cup. That's not the actual cup. It might be a foot past and a foot right.
Right.
Or, some guys see the ball actually like visualize it tracking into the hole. And so there's a lot of ways to do it. And, it's such a personal thing. And so many, a lot of guys have had success doing a lot of other things, but I think like anything in sport, especially in a very competitive level, you have to be committed to what you're doing and be trust that you have the process that you need to succeed. Because if you start, it's really easy to start trying 5 different things in one round, and I know a lot of amateur golfers who, change their grip mid-round or try this thing or that thing every other week, and, being consistent is really huge, I think, for being successful.
Consistent and committed.
Yeah.
I feel like when I've met the world's best athletes, like, that's a recurring theme. They're just like there's maybe a process by which they're changing something, but once they've changed it, they're committed to it,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
for sure, and, there's a whole they don't make changes on a whim either, there's a
Yeah,
whole thought
it's very
process behind
intentional,
it,
right?
and, yeah, there's either a lot of times it's either data or stats that are kinda driving their need or want to change, and, especially now in 2024, I mean, athletes, there's every sport has access to crazy amounts of data now, and, athletes are just getting bigger, faster, and stronger because of that, and, that's why I think data is becoming super important to use, and if you're not using it, I feel like you're a step behind everyone else.
So you picked yourself as the best long iron player, which I love. Tell me, what advice would you give me if I wanna hit a better 3 iron? Like, what's, like, the best advice for amateurs on dialing in your 3, 4, 5 irons?
Yeah, I think, something that's really important that a lot of amateurs might just have a set of irons that's just their, you know, the same set. I think a lot of amateurs should go to maybe a chunkier iron in their 5, 4, 3 iron.
Oh,
Just
interesting.
gives them a little bit more help getting the ball up in the air, a touch more ball speed, and you'll kind of see that gapping. Because I bet you if you went to a lot of amateurs who are 5 to 10 handicaps, if you have them hit their 4 iron and 3 iron, they might only go like 7 or 8 yards different in the air. So, changing your clubs up a little bit to help that gapping out would be huge. And, getting more height on the ball is important. I think a lot of amateurs should go to hybrids, probably in that 4 iron, 3 iron range, unless you have a lot of speed. I haven't seen your swing yet, but um, if you have a lot of speed, you can play the irons. But a lot of those guys who are slower swings, just give yourself make the game easy on yourself. I think there's a lot of stigma around golf of not wanting to be wimpy and playing a bunch of hybrids and 7 woods, but the game's hard enough.
Yeah.
Make it as easy on yourself as possible.
Speaking of stigma, what do you think of the tall putter, the
Oh
belly putter, and all
gosh,
that?
I've actually like one of my teammates had one, and he toyed around with it. It has its cons, pros and cons, really. I think it's if you're over a 3 or 4 footer, having that belly putter is it feels hard to miss. I think, but when you're sitting over a 40-foot putt, it's really hard to gauge distance and have that type of feel, especially with like an arm lock too, which is really popular, and that takes a lot of practice and skill. So I think I putt conventionally, and like it because I'm a real feel putter, and I feel like it helps my distance putting. And the
But it
belly
sounds like
putt,
you don't have an issue with putters
no,
doing it.
I don't have an issue with it because I mean golf's really hard regardless, and if it was so much easier, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah.
And obviously, not a lot of guys on tour. I think there's only a handful of guys on tour really using the long putter.
What's next for you in the coming months?
Yeah, well, we're gonna go next couple of weeks, go to PGA Tour Americas, go to Canada, get some reps in up there, and have some fun. Kind of get back to you know just building up some points and getting experience. And then this fall, we're going to try and play a few events on the PGA Tour again, see what sponsors exemptions we can get. And the big number for us is 97 FedEx Cup points. If we can get 97 more FedEx Cup points, we'll trigger special temporary status. And that would be massive for us. And it'd be give us the opportunity to earn tour status, not through Q school. So we're hopeful that we can get that done.
And that would help you avoid having to go through Q school, which is like the ultimate grind, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a grind. Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm through to second stage because of the mid cut at the majors, but still, I mean, getting through second stage and into final stage is no cakewalk. So you got to go play really good golf. Professional golf is really tough because like you alluded to earlier, even those guys who are playing mini tours and maybe playing Q school, like there are great players out
Yeah.
there, and there's a lot of guys without status anywhere that are just any given week can play awesome. I mean, you see it all the time. Monday qualifiers go and finish well in PGA Tour events or Corn Ferry events, and there's the depth in golf is unbelievable right now. Especially the guys coming out of college are really prepared to go take on professional golf, and it's you've kind of seen a new wave of young players, and it's exciting to be part of that.
The Q school process, describe that for half a second, because that's like I don't think people realize how insane it is to try to go through that.
Yeah, so if you start out at pre-qualifying, you have a 3-round pre-qualifying where I'm not sure what the number is, but you maybe have to be top 20 out of maybe 150 guys. And then you go to first stage and it's 4 rounds and you have to be again like top 20 out of 150. And then you go to second stage and it's just, same deal, you have 150 guys. You got to be in the top 10 or something there. And then you go to final stage and there's 3 PGA Tour cards up for grabs, 30 or so Corn Ferry cards for full status, and then the rest of them it's some America status. And so even if you make it through pre-qualifying, first stage, second stage, and you don't have a good week at final stage, you might not have very good status. And you could be playing great and maybe trip over yourself on second stage, and all of a sudden you have nothing. So it's a really cutthroat process, but it I think the one thing about it is the one way to think about a golf career is it's really a marathon, not a sprint. And one year, or, one tournament really doesn't define a career. And that's kind of the approach that I've been taking, and my team's been really trying to press upon me is like, it's not, things don't work out this year. If we don't get those 97 points, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm a really quality player. And at the end of the day, good golf, kind of trumps all. So
I mean, that process sounds like the kind of process you could drop like a top 10 player in the world at the beginning, and they might not get all the way through the process.
Yeah, I mean, if they have a bad week,
If you have a bad,
yeah, because I mean, it starts in, like, October, I think, or September, and you have to go all the way to December, so, you have 3 months of golf, and you have to be on your game throughout all 3 of those months, and I don't think there's man, there's not a lot of guys who have ever gone through from pre-qualifying all the way through and gotten their tour card. I mean, I think it's only happened a handful of times, and it's something that's, it's just a brutal
did you
process.
ever hear the story about the guy who had like a 2-footer or whatever to get in on Q school, and he hit the putt in the dead middle, and it hit the inner cup and
And popped
popped
out.
back?
I think I saw the video and he, like, slams his hat on the green and is looking at, yeah, I think he missed it by 1, and I mean, that's
That's kind of like nauseating to think about.
I couldn't even imagine that. That'd be just so sickening. You hate to see bad breaks like that, because, like, at the end of the day, we're all kinda rooting for each other, the golf community is pretty tight-knit, and you wanna see guys play well, and you know that at some point,
There's a
you
karma
yeah,
factor.
exactly. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, you lose 99% of the tournaments you play unless your name's Tiger Woods, then you only lose 30% or whatever it is. So, kinda sticking together and, that bond of, there's a bond on tour. A lot of guys stick together. It's pretty cool community.
What are your top 3 golf courses?
Mm, gosh, that's a question I have, um, thought about a lot. A it's always a discussion, or especially in college, everyone has their own opinions. I would have to go Oakmont and Augusta National are my 1, 2,
Okay,
in no particular order. I can't really place one above the other. I love Oakmont has a lot of, that's my first US Amateur back in '22. I caddied there, so just a lot of sentimental value there in my hometown, but Augusta is Augusta. And then, for 3, I could pick one of 5 different places. I mean, I love the Country Club here in Boston.
sure.
I love, Friars Head out on Long Island.
That's a great spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably my 3rd pick, but, I mean, I've been fortunate to play a lot of great golf
Yeah, I
courses,
bet.
and, it's hard to pick number 3, that's for sure.
Well, maybe we'll get out on the country club together at some point. That'd be fun. I'd love to have you over there.
I would be more than happy to come whenever you'd like.
Well, Neil, this has been a blast, man. Thanks for coming on. Congratulations on your career so far. I think it's only going to go soar higher. And thanks for being on Whoop.
Yeah, thanks, guys, appreciate it.
Hey everyone, big thank you to Neal for coming on the Whoop podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating or a review. Please subscribe to the Whoop podcast. You can check us out on social at Whoop, at Will Ahmed. If you want to sign up for a free trial, check out whoop.com, learn more about this wearable. And that's a wrap, folks. Stay healthy and stay in the green.